When mankind finally managed to escape their own isolated backwater, we knew that should we ever meet another sentient race, we would be dwarfed by their knowledge, experience, and power. We did not, however, expect to be dwarfed literally. To our surprise, mankind was not exactly close to commonly sized. As a matter of fact, we were quite small in comparison. The first contact we had was quite imposing, like being a child next to an elephant. The aliens were, to put it mildly, shocked. They did not anticipate our lack of size, and conversely, we didn't really expect to be picked up and cooed at for being small and supposedly cute. The gruff captain of that first exploratory vessel never really lived it down that a huge six-legged lizard lifted him like he was a little kitten or an astronaut action figure. At least our first contact wasn't negative, but still, it seemed that the natural conditions of life weren't like those on Earth, but in fact developed rather different outcomes. The smallest were about 10 times the size of an average human being. The biggest, well, some planets had races of enormous sentient organisms comprising entire ecosystems on their own. Yet, it wasn't really fun. We were something of a laughingstock when our existence had been revealed to the wider galaxy. To prevent being stepped on, one would have to wear a long, hard light pole warning people that somebody that small was around. We were, well, small. To get access to even old tech from them, we'd have to pay quite high prices, because why would they bother giving us the good stuff after all? Most of them had vermin on their homeworld the size of us. The galactic community assigned us the absolute minimum of worlds for our own colonization, figuring we wouldn't need that much space anyway. Human merchants were disregarded, human science was belittled, human culture was considered at best quaint, at worst immature. Not that they really listened or saw or experienced anything we had to offer. To the galaxy at large, we were the small, cute, and therefore weak race. It was demeaning, humiliating, and not a good indicator of our future. Some races suggested, in hypothetical talks on their galaxy-wide communications networks, similar to human internet but bigger, that humanity was too weak to survive in the long run and perhaps should have our independence and freedom taken, for our own protection. We didn't like that. On Earth, however, we've heard of this before. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. The story of David versus Goliath, the 300 at Thermopylae against the Persian Empire, Finland against the USSR, Vietnam against America, the underdog defeating impossible odds against a bigger, stronger, and usually older opponent, or at the very least showing that just because they're small doesn't mean they aren't strong. Humanity is not a race of cute, tiny people. We are a race forged from thousands of years of destructive and horrible war. And yet we were ridiculed, even though in sheer warlike nature we were greater than any other race. Peaceful, orderly, and harmonious governments, both democratic, monarchical, theocratic, and others, that was the norm for most of history for other races. Because, as Sun Tzu said, if you know the enemy and you know yourself, you shall not fear defeat in 100 battles, and knowledge was easy to get. Humans don't like being treated like children, but we are damned good at exploiting it when we could. Asking really nicely for complete versions, the histories of other races, nobody batted an eye. But we did when we found how peaceful they had been. They did not really do war, as such, when they were bigger races, as they needed to work together a lot earlier in order to escape Malthusian disasters on their worlds and go into space. We had a lot more time to get really damned good at being bastards. And at Avalon 5, one of our half-dozen colonies, we needed that. When another race had petitioned to be allowed to seize the planet and relocate the human colonists there to an area the size of Belgium, the colonists weren't happy. Humanity as a whole was still disjointed, but the colonists were smart. The aliens didn't expect us to sneak into their ships at night while they slept, our small feet not making even the barest of sounds, as we like rats dug our way into their walls. The colonists hid there, and at night they would come out sabotaging equipment, cutting wires, contaminating medicine, activate their communication devices, and playing loud and rather gross alien pornography, waking the aliens throughout the night. The aliens did not consider the possibility that it had been the relocated colonists getting vengeance. They complained to their homeworld government, getting more supplies, and yet there would still be failures, damages, sudden changes in temperature, atmospheric pressure, and the destruction of prized personal items. Eventually, the aliens, dejected by their constant failures, their giant crops failing, abandoned their colony, never the wiser. But we learned. And some humans considered that our first strike for our place in amongst the stars. The first colonial guards of Avalon 5 would, after those days, proudly wear the mark of a stylized rat as their symbol. And yet it was inevitable that eventually resources would get scarcer. Humanity managed, for a while, not to lose territory and keep what we had. But eventually the galaxy edged closer and closer to carrying capacity, with the closest next non-satellite galaxy being some 1.6 million light-years away. Further expansion was going to be difficult. Where before there had been enough resources for everyone, for the first time, the larger aliens felt the constraints that humanity had felt, with limited resources and no easy options. At first it was harsher rhetoric in the galactic commons, then it was aggressive demands, then threats, posturing, warships, border skirmishes. But it really broke down when one of the planet-covering organism worlds was wiped clean of life and resettled with other sentient life forms. After that, the galactic community broke down, and chaos ensued. Humanity, already living in a backwater, the interstellar version of old, decaying industrial towns, did not feel much of the collapse of interstellar trade. After all, who bought from humans? Yet even as we turned back to making our weapons, the war got closer and closer. Eventually an enemy appeared. Not one of the strongest or the most capable, but definitely a group that could, in the eyes of other races, be our doom. They didn't believe that we had anything that could affect them, and for a while, it seemed to be true. As their fleet moved towards our colonies, only a single, sleek gray ship flew against them. They didn't even bother to fire at it. Their mistake. The ship fired its payload of missiles, armed with modified versions of ancient human horror. It was a bloodbath. As the missiles blew, the telltale glow of a sudden nuclear explosion were observed by cold hearts and ruthless eyes. They did not have protection against such applied plutonium. Humanity was tired of being laughed at, of being thought small and weak. That was truly the moment when we showed them. Humanity, angry, scared, and not entirely sure on their future in a galaxy at war, sent out thousands of small, fast bombers designed to drop their payloads and with one fell swoop, cleanse a planet, destroy fleets, end those who had thought us beneath their notice. Even without the warheads, we were becoming feared. Following the example of Avalon 5, we infiltrated many ships and slowly killed the entire crew, allowing us to take their enormous vessels back to be torn apart. The technology studied, the metals repurposed for new human crafts, cities, and war engines. We changed from the laughingstock to be feared everywhere. Aliens said that you wouldn't know that you had an infestation of humans before they had poisoned your food, killed your crew, and disabled your long-range communications. Our men did not fight with our bodies. They fought with orbital bombardments, rocket launchers, and even weapons we had once banned or absurd, ranging from punt guns and automatic 50-caliber Gatling guns, to chemical weaponry, subterfuge, targeted bioweaponry, and as the war progressed and other races started to copy us, experimental megastructure weaponry. When humanity fired the first, and only, Nicole Dyson cannon, fired and with a single concentrated strike, could either scorch the life of an entire world or break stars if needed. The war raged for upwards of 1,000 years. But at the end, humanity was ascendant, a strong, unified nation with power, technology, and economics that were unrivaled. Most of the rest of the galaxy was in ruins. The other races, the other winners of the galaxy-wide war, gave humanity a wide berth, fearing them as much as they had once ridiculed them. Where once humanity had to give space for others, humans preserved as many sentience as possible on preservation worlds, or allowing the few that would collaborate to have their own small empires. Where once humanity had been considered small, now mankind had grown greater than all others.